Thank you to Leroy and Auntie Newts and everyone from Freedom School for doing this for us. The first one was amazing, and I have no doubt that this one's going to be wonderful as well. So I will turn it over to you, Leroy.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone who's joining us again. I'm really happy to see that people came back and to see some of y'all faces again. And I think that today on Coup Day, we can really see why this is so necessary to be able to have a framework for how to engage our kids and the young people in our communities around talking about race and racism. So we're just going to begin with the land acknowledgement from last session. Okay. So in solidarity, we reflect, we honor this truth with respect, that on this land where we all stand is dished with one spoon, wampum belt land. We all stand in solidarity with the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat First Nations, Inuit, and Cree, great allies we pledge to be. Indigenous people around the world, you see. Indigenous people could be you or me. Oromo, Taino, Samoan, or Cree, we are here in solidarity. So this land is acknowledgement is something that we created for Freedom School. And it's an example of how to curate material to be accessible to kids, to engage them. It's using language that they could understand and that you could use to let them know a little bit more about what is indigeneity and why do we do a land acknowledgement and so on. Okay, so we'll also review, well, we can do this little check-in this week as well. If you would like to, you could choose an emoji that represents how you're feeling right now. And you could copy it into the paste, or you could just write a few words in the chat. It's nice to hear from people and just see how you're feeling. I know that today is a very strange day. So feel free to put an emoji or a couple of your thoughts. Anxious face, saddy face. Exhausted, overwhelmed, but still hopeful. Yes, a lot of people are transitioning. I mean, the children in my house have been doing online learning for the year, but I guess a lot of people are also transitioning to online learning. So a lot of tireds and sads and anxious. Oh my God. Okay, so we will also review the ground rules for our conversations today. So that ones that we worked on together last time. So we're gonna keep these in mind. Our ground rules to speak up and hold back. So to try, if you're somebody who tends to be a little more quieter, to engage, even if it's just in the chat. And if you tend to be somebody who speaks more, to create space for others, especially for people to contribute their firsthand experience when it comes to racism and oppression. We are going to try to speak from our own experience and speak to the issues, not the person, if we do happen to have a disagreement. We will try to keep confidentiality. So anything that's said inside of the space, we will try to just keep it confidential to the space so people could feel comfortable to express themselves. We will hold space for the most marginalized in the group to speak to issues. The framework of anti-racism really believes that people who experience know best. So people who have those, we will try to keep space for most marginalized in our conversation. And we will not try to disprove oppression. There are many spaces where that is the goal, and there are many conversations where the first step is for Indigenous, Black, or other racialized people to prove the existence of racism. That's not our goal with this session. We're coming from an anti-racism perspective already, and we're just sharing ideas for how to engage our kids in talking about race and racism. Okay. Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of like, we'll also just, I guess, keep in mind the vibe in terms of our conversation, because a lot of people in the chat are feeling very anxious, tired, worried, burnt out, angry. So we'll try to keep that in mind in terms of just being generous with each other, patient with each other. This is a learning space and a space where we can make mistakes and a space where we'll be gentle with each other. So thanks for the check-ins, and we'll just bear that in mind as we go along. Okay, and so we can move forward now to just a map of where we have been together and where we will be going. So in session 1, we kind of laid a foundation for understanding race and racism in Canada. And I know for a lot of people, some of the information could have been repetitive, or for some people, it could have been new information. And the reason why we did that is just so that we have some understanding of what do we mean by when we say race, and what do we mean by when we say racism. A lot of the Black experiences in Canada and Black experiences of oppression are actually erased. So it's important that we bring some of those things to light. So that was session 1 last time. Session 2, which is today, we will be talking more about how we actually bring these ideas to our children and the children in our communities. So I know, like, some of the feedback, people were really hoping to get into that part. So hopefully that will be, people will enjoy doing that today. And then session 3, I'm not sure if we will actually have, I think we'll probably have 3 sessions from what I understand. So the next session after this, we'll be going deeper into the conversation. We didn't really want to just have like a one-off conversation. So we'll be going deeper into the conversation of confronting racism in our own school communities. And we haven't really like pre-mapped out all of session 3 yet, because we want to inform ourselves by actually the opinions and experiences of parents in your various schools. So we're going to decide on the content a little bit more after the 3 affinity groups have been, after the first 2 affinity groups have been done. Affinity groups. So any of y'all who are identify as BIPOC, you could feel free, like was said at the beginning of the session, to join us on Thursday. And then what we discuss in the affinity group, we also use that to determine where we're going with these sessions. Okay. So when we are talking about these topics with our kids, a lot of times what comes up is people not quite being sure about what is age appropriate. So people having questions about, is it really age appropriate to start talking to children about race? At what age do we do that? Do we wait until they're teenagers, or when do we start talking to them about it? Because sometimes people have a fear that if you highlight race, that it could make something an issue that maybe was not an issue before. Or sometimes people think that they could potentially protect their kids' innocence by avoiding the topic of race and racism. So why we want to really be intentional about exploring race and racism with our kids is because for Black and Indigenous and other racialized people, whether or not we actually acknowledge race for children is not really a choice. From when I was in kindergarten and I first went to school, I was made aware from the other kids about being different, and in terms of race and in terms of other intersectional identities. So if we leave it up to kids to just figure these things out on their own, we may not be happy or agreeing with the type of messaging that they're getting. Obviously, the political climate that we're in right now is very, very charged in terms of race and racism. And without our consent, our kids are getting different intense messaging each day about the value of Black lives and about their own self-worth. So it's essential that we engage in this conversation, and it's essential that we try to provide a more honest and nuanced account of history, and that we equipped children with the tools to actually manage racism. If kids, like we talked about last session, but I'm not sure if everybody was there. So if kids are not aware of structural racism, they might experience the impacts, but internalize it as something wrong with them rather than being able to identify what's going on and deconstruct. So I would say that every age is the age where it's appropriate to start talking about race and racism. Although the conversation will look different at different ages. And we'll talk about that more tonight as we go along. But one thing that we do need to keep in mind and be mindful about is igniting trauma. So that's the reason why we scaffold and differentiate the information for different ages, because we want to make sure that we present the information in a way that would not ignite trauma, especially for those who actually experience race and racism. So a lot of people talk about, learning about racism in class when they were younger and feeling really embarrassed or put on the spot by the way that the information was transmitted. So that's something that we want to keep in mind and be mindful about as we engage our kids in these conversations. Okay, so we'll go on now. And there's 4 things that we're going to mention that would be excellent things to keep in mind in terms of how we could actually frame these conversations in a way that where they will be empowering for children, and especially in a way where they will be empowering for Black, Indigenous, and racialized children. The first thing is framing the conversation in an empowering way by focusing on Black brilliance while being mindful of respectability politics. So this is something that's, I guess when it comes to having conversations about race and racism at school, this is a good entry point and something that's potentially a little bit more common, which is focusing on highlighting people who are excelling and celebrating the different achievements within racialized communities. And this is always something that's fun for kids, that's empowering, and that, makes you feel proud, makes you feel good. So on here we have some different images. There's an image of Surya Bonali doing a backflip. She's a Black figure skater, and she does amazing tricks. And unfortunately, she ended up being disqualified, but for doing these tricks, because the backflip is like so dangerous and difficult that people are actually discouraged from doing it. But that's I talk to my kids about Surya Bonali because what her power and her brilliance is something that people were afraid of, hence why she was not allowed to compete, but is an example of the incredible brilliance and power that young Black people have, and skills and talents. So that's one story that could be highlighted. There's also an image of Caleb Anderson, who at 9 months knew sign language. He was reading at 1 year old. At 2, he could do fractions. He then passed first grade at 3 years old. And in 2020, Caleb is currently a sophomore at Georgia Tech, pursuing his bachelor degree in aerospace engineering at 12 years old. And then the other image is an image from Debbie Allen's Hot Chocolate Nutcracker, which is like a Black focused production of the Nutcracker. And it's a really beautiful and cool ballet. But is it recommended for all parents to talk about these Black stories? I'm just reading these questions as we go along from the chat. I think that it is great for all parents to talk about these Black stories, and they're empowering Black stories. So yes, I think that parents, any race, could share these stories with their kids, because a lot of times when you're in school, it's like whiteness is taken as the default. So you learn a lot about European cultures and European success stories, but you would not necessarily learn these stories. And a lot of times, if you're a Black person looking in the media, you will see portrayals of sports, and you will see portrayals of crimes and that kind of thing, but you won't see these stories highlighted. So like I did an activity one time with my grade ones where they compared the portrayals of Black people they see in mainstream media to the portrayals of Black people they see in independent media. And they really noticed they don't come across these positive stories. So these particular stories come from Facebook, something called Powerful Black Stories, the Facebook page. And you could have your kids go through, and each morning they could do a little newscast, just 5 minutes, highlighting a story that they saw on Powerful Black Stories. And that could be a great activity. Or they could look in other independent media if you don't like for them to go on Facebook, I understand, and just find and highlight those positive stories. So somebody said, sorry if I missed this, I'm not familiar with respectability politics. So the reason why I put that in there is because, excuse me, a lot of times there's this idea that a Black life is valuable if the person was, let's say, on the track to university, or if the person was outstanding in school, or doing other things that are respectable in terms of middle class values. I disagree with that idea very deeply. I think that every Black life is valuable, even a Black life who's incarcerated, a Black life who's engaged in crimes of poverty or doing crimes to support their family to make it through. So I don't believe in valuing one Black life over another, or this idea that we should have to be exceptional in order for our Black lives to matter. So I think that sometimes it could be a little tricky when we, you know, talk about these positive Black stories, but then when Black people who are facing severe oppressions are being criminalized, we kind of push that to the side because they're not the ones excelling in these different things. So I think we do have to be mindful about respectability politics, and we do have to be intervening and telling our kids that all Black lives matter, no matter what. But that there's no reason why we would not share these beautiful stories, especially the ones of exceptional Black young people with OR Kids. So that's number one in terms of framing the conversation in an empowering way, focusing on Black brilliance. So we will go to the second one. Okay, so the second thing that we can explore with OR Kids is focusing on Black joy and pride in our culture. So down here we have two images. One is from Janet Jackson's recent, well, actually it's not that recent now, oh my gosh, but music video Made for Now. It's a very beautiful and fun video that really just loves up on Black culture from all over the continent and in the diaspora, different kinds of dance, different kinds of fashion and expression. It's something that I love showing to young people and just watching how they get so happy and excited about the culture. On the other side, we have Pharrell Williams' video Happy. And I love that music video is literally just different shots of different people experiencing Black joy and other people experiencing joy in the video as well. And then in the center here, there's an image from the Black Panther movie of the Dora Milaje. So for those of you all who are not really like comic book people or watch the Black Panther movie, the idea for a Black Panther is that it's set in a country that is on the continent of Africa, but the country has never experienced enslavement or colonization. So all of the resources in the country are used for the people. And because of that, there's amazing technological advances that have happened in Wakanda. That's where Black Panther is set. And I think that's such an empowering idea to explore with young people. Like, what do you think a place would be like if there had never been colonization? And if you were a Black superhero, what power would you want to have that you think could help out your people? That kind of thing. So these are just three examples of how you can focus on Black joy and pride when exploring with your kids. And there's also some ideas for activities that you could do daily. One is writing daily affirmations. So that's something that they could do like on their mirror. And affirmations are meant to be written in the present. So instead of saying like, for example, instead of saying, I want to be smart, you would say, I am smart. And you could write your affirmation on your mirror and you could say it every day. I am smart. I am beautiful. I am loved. I am Black. I am powerful. And saying those affirmations daily is a beautiful thing for them to do that could help interrupt different messaging that they could be receiving that could be negative. And also gratitude journals are an excellent activity to do daily. It's also a great activity to do daily for people to reflect on their privilege. Last session we were talking about the idea of privilege and allyship. So gratitude journal is an excellent thing to do daily. Just taking stock of the things that you feel lucky for, and based on that, what would you like to share with others? So in my daughter's class, they do a gratitude journal, and sometimes she writes like silly things like, I am grateful to play Nintendo Switch. But it could be also like, they can be encouraged to reflect deeper on, oh, she's saying she does not do that. They could be encouraged to reflect deeper on things that they feel privileged about and grateful for, and what they want to do with that privilege, how they want to share it with others or use it to help others. Okay, and next one here. Framing the conversation in an empowering way. Do not shy away from talking about difference, inequity, and oppression. But how we can make it empowering is by focusing on the resistance, change, and activism. So there's two images down here. One is an image of the Toronto Raptors tour bus, which they painted with the Black Lives Matter slogan on it. And another is an image of a basketball court. And on the basketball court, there's a huge painting of Breonna Taylor that's painted on it. And it says Black Lives Matter. And it's something that community came together to create this basketball court as a way to remember, to say her name, Breonna Taylor, to remember and to also always serve as a reminder that we need to continue to fight for change. So I think why it's important to highlight resistance when we do talk about oppression is because it gives young people an opportunity to feel like they could participate in resisting something if they don't feel that it's fair. It's not really, I don't think it's really okay to tell young people that all of these systems of oppression exist if we don't then give them ways to intervene and show them the ways that Black people have always resisted and Indigenous people always resist when oppression is happening. And they can be part of that too. And it doesn't always have to be, it can be protesting in the street, but it can also be things like making art. It can also be things like singing. It could also be things like dancing. So this resistance and this participation in social activism can be accessible and age appropriate. And it's beautiful to show young people these examples of how they could use their voices in different ways. And the fourth way, framing the conversation in an empowering way, could happen is when we use shared culture as a point from which we can move forward with mutual respect and as a way to develop allyship. So down here, if you live in Toronto, whether or not this is part of your culture, you may know what this is. Could you write in the chat if you know what it is? Roti. So this is an activity that we did with kids in an elementary school. And I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but this elementary school where we're looking for ways to develop, to intervene in, some people call it like lateral violence or oppression or racism between Black and South Asian students. They were looking for ways to help South Asian students to understand anti-Black racism and to act as allies. So an activity that we came up with to do is we made roti together, and we used the roti to talk about history in Trinidad and how in Trinidad first, you know, there was oppression towards Indigenous people that lived in Trinidad. After there was enslavement of Black people, African people who were brought to Trinidad, there was also indentured labor of South Asian and Indian people coming to Trinidad. And then when all these people mixed up, there started to be tensions and oppression even between those two groups. Some of those groups were endowed with more privilege than others. But the fusion of all those three groups created this unique dish that's known as roti. And when we have groups coming together, we have an opportunity to create and invent things together. And we also have opportunities to create allyships where we have each other's backs. And we also see moments in history in Trinidad where African and Indian people and other South Asian people work together to resist a certain injustice. So talking about like naming our shared culture is always a powerful way that we can identify with each other. And then we don't have to stop there. We can push the envelope to, okay, we have this shared culture. How do we push to also have shared visions of empowering ourselves and shared allyship? Okay, So let's push on to the next one. Yeah. Okay, so Auntie Nudes is going to talk to y'all a little bit about resources that we've found that can engage young people in these conversations.
Hi, everyone. So this is a selection, just a small sample of books for teens, young adults. Some of them are, one is a Canadian author, Christopher Paul Curtis, who's based out of Chatham, where they've got a site for the Indigenous Railroad and other things. And then really a lot of the books can be framed around Black liberation and activism. So as you read through the stories, you can consider that as the main theme and help or have the kids, to read all the books with them. They're teens. Sorry, my kid's just 7, so I got to read everything with her. But yeah, and so these ones are geared more towards teens, okay, and preteens, yes. Next slide. As well, I should say that as well, a lot of the books can be found as animated films or produced films. So the book and the film usually for teens goes well together. So the second slide, this one is for younger children. So from, I'd say kindergarten or JK to, 6, till how old are they before they're preteens? 10, 12. And so, there's this virtual library is a fantastic resource. It's got the books sectioned off into categories, and you just click on the book that you want and it opens up the PDF or a shared link that you can read the books together, or the kids can read them themselves. So we did programming this summer, and one of our break times we had the virtual library up and the kids just went through and clicked on their own and read their own books, and had great conversations to come back with. Anti-Racist Baby is a really cool board book, like the hard ones for little kids. But, my 7-year-old, my nieces who are 9 and 6, we read it as well. They love it. Also, like The Proudest Blue, helping to build the language and knowledge of intersectionality. So Black Muslims, there's Black queer people, there's Black scientists, there's, all of us can be all. So, and then I Like Myself is a really cute, fun book. I'd say up to about grade 3, grade 4. And there are also lots of places that you can find these books. So a different book list has links to a lot of these books that you can purchase or find free links to. I find them great when we have my nieces sleep over and, they've read all the books in my house. And so we get to go pick through these to do nighttime reading or afternoon break times. And so it makes it easy that way. I would say that it is important to read these stories, our stories, as much as it is important to read about Scottish culture and Japanese culture and Southwestern culture and American culture and Canadian culture. This is what builds knowledge for children and for adults about how we intersect and how we differ. And it creates that mutual respect and understanding for how we interact with people, how we present our privilege and what we do with it. And kids are always looking for what's right and to create justice, right? So having great books like this that show empowerment and joyful stories is great from all cultures. And these are the resources you can use for Black stories. You can go to the next one. YouTube, my fantastic world of resources. So the two on the bottom were created by us at Freedom School, and artists and animators that worked with us. One is the story of Haiti and the revolution there. And the other is about the Oromo resistance in Ethiopia. And then the other two at the top I put in, one is a little short film about the power of hair. It's called Hair Love. And the other one is, I use this series to teach about science to my kids. So they do, light energy and transmutations and water and land and chemical balances, just cool stuff. So any of the things that, you're interested in looking at with your kids, you don't always have to go to the number one choice on the list. You can look for things that have a variety of people in them, Black characters from Black stories, that are there. And that's a very easy way at home for you to incorporate the Black curriculum and ideas into what you're learning every day, right? So that way it becomes commonplace that we're talking about not other people, but people that are Black and their stories, right? So it's not, we no longer other us, right? We then incorporate us into our lives. And so just like most kids know about, few specific other cultures, um, since we're all living together on this planet, it would be great to combat anti-Black racism in our homes, in our families, in our communities, in our schools, with that background knowledge and that self-assurance that children need to know that they're great and that they can be great for their friends. A lot of things that I experienced in school was that if my Jewish friends or white presenting friends would stand up for me, then they would get bullied. And so then my parents would have conversations with their parents that would build their knowledge so that their kids could then not only have my back, but have their own back, right? And so it's important to collect and create these resources, and we're happy to share them with you. Okay, next. So places to go. I know a lot of places are closed, but a lot of sites are offering virtual tours and free virtual tours. So one of the sites is in Chatham, and it's the Underground Railroad Museum. They would get together with the Chatham Kent Black History Society every year and do an emancipation celebration and homecoming, a huge event. You would get, jazz musicians from around the world, classical musicians, business owners, entrepreneurs, academics, families, just huge amounts of people from across Ontario, the States, Canada, getting together to learn and celebrate together. There are neighborhoods like Little Jamaica at Eglinton West to go through and be around people and smell the food and, socially distanced grocery shop. Is a great experience. There's an alleyway where this picture is of the graffiti art, and it's called Welcome to Reggae Lane. And it's a whole lane full of beautiful art that you can just walk through. When my daughter was about 3, we would walk up from Davenport, just walk through the lane and walk back and talk about the colors and the forms. And, she now loves to see it as we're driving by. Don't walk as much anymore. And yeah, it's somewhere she knows that is Little Jamaica, and that she knows that Caribbean culture really just explodes there. Right. The band gallery also offers virtual tours. They're beyond their 10th anniversary now, but they're a great Black focused and based gallery here in Toronto. And so places like this, sites like this, you can also go to these sites and gather their resources that are on there. And yes, you guys will have access to this presentation so that you can get the links and the lists. There it is. Thanks, Lever. Okay, next slide, please. and Freedom School's resources. So if you go to freedomschooltoronto.ca under our educational resources, we've got some resources that you can purchase and some free resources. So our puzzles and our workbooks, and then we've got links to the videos that we created, the animations and some other videos. Yeah. Thank you. Allied actions. So allyship is active. It means constantly and intentionally intervening in oppressive structures. What allied actions do you or can you do with your children? It's important for them to know that they can engage safely and with great strength and power in intervening in these oppressive systems. What allied actions would you or can you encourage them to do on their own? Next slide.
Oh, can I say something on the allied actions?
Yes.
I just also wanted to highlight some work that's happening in the city that people could plug into in terms of allyship. So there's a group called SURGE, which is actually, I'm not really sure what the acronym stands for. Standing Up. It is a group for allies to engage in conversations and actions around anti-racism. And they're Stand Up for Racial Justice. Thank you so much. And as part of SURGE, there's also a parent group, and the parent group supports with educational activism a lot. They were very active in the campaign to remove police officers from schools in 2017. And they were also participated in the Walkout for Black Lives, which was where students, parents, and educators walked out of schools for a day to stand up against anti-Black racism in schools. So SURGE Parent Group is a great thing to link, is a great organization to link into what they're doing. They make really practical suggestions for ways that you can engage as an ally on their platforms a lot. Like, for example, during the SRO campaign, they asked people to talk to their own children's principals about how they feel about having police in schools, things like that. And yeah, they do excellent work. And so how Nudes was bringing up what allied actions you could do with your children, and what could you encourage them to do on your own. We have a few examples of things that we've done in Freedom School and things that we just have done with our own kids in our own family. So some things that we have done is write letters to political prisoners. We've written letters to Mutulu Shakur, for example, who was active in the Black Liberation Army. We've written letters to Mocha Dawkins when she was incarcerated. And I think this is really important because a lot of times with the type of media that kids consume, it's like there's bad guys and good guys. And it's like, if you're in prison, you're a bad guy. And it helps kids to actually deconstruct this idea, to get to know the stories of some people who are incarcerated, and to not be afraid of people who may have that as part of their history. And this is so important because some kids do have parents who are incarcerated. And it's like, if they're going to school and then somebody mentions, we're going to write a letter to Mutulu Shakur because he's incarcerated and he's part of our community and we support and love him, then I've done this in my class before, and kids have come out and said, my dad is incarcerated. And I was embarrassed to say that before, and I'm not embarrassed now. So it's important to acknowledge these realities because they could be realities of kids in the class. And it's important to just know, again, to reinforce that all Black lives matter and that we're there supporting our community, whether we see them in front of us or not. We've also written letters to, sorry, Nudzi.
I think it's also important for them to understand that that's another way that they can interrupt the system, is by caring for someone And that then allows them to know that if they get in trouble, if they do something wrong, or if they get a mistake, or that someone they know or see, that they still deserve care and that they still can be cared for and helped and justice still can be served.
Mm-hmm. And then somebody mentioned in the chat, is it important to differentiate between actions and human worth? There's negative actions, but that doesn't mean you're a negative person or a bad person. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think that's so important, and it helps to give the kids more grace in terms of when they make mistakes, like Auntie Nudes mentioned. And then another action that's great is to write letters to government officials and decision makers. I encourage my kids to do that all the time because although they do not have the right to vote or engage in electoral politics, they still have their own personal power and they still have the right to engage with issues that affect them and that they are interested in. Okay, that was just some examples.
That should say fun activity while we create breakout rooms. So we're gonna workshop a bit together in our breakout rooms. We've got some themes for you guys to go through. But during that time, we're gonna do an alphabet challenge. So for each letter of the alphabet, list in the chat a movie or book that you've seen or read about Black people and or Black people or people of color.
So do we start with A?
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess this could be something that's for kids that helps kids to engage in the conversation, or it could be something that you watch that help you engage in the conversation as a parent. So let's go, y'all.
To share adult resources so that we bump up our knowledge on things that isn't age appropriate for the children, but you know, a lot of the ideas are backing what we are teaching the kids, right? So we have better understanding and we can just learn with them better. Black Lady Sketch Show, so good. Good one. I'm not great at names.
B, Black Panther, Bayou Magic.
Oh, yeah, nice. Aquila and the Bee, great movie, great story.
Oh, hamster. Oh, Color Purple.
Whew. Bluest Eye, yeah, with Toni Morrison.
Get on D. Or E. Oh, Dear White People. That was an interesting one on Netflix. G.
Mom, maybe help. I don't know how to do like the multiple of 3. I know that there's 15 in the multiple of 3. That's all I got.
Is she telling you now?
No.
These are some cute resources.
How would I put it? So how did you get 15?
Nice.
G.
Don't chew on your headphones. So you have to find 25, 25 numbers that are multiples of 3.
And we need it in 1 week.
Oh, okay.
Color Girls. forgot about that. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, you already did it?
What?
What? My
Hmm. Anybody got a J? Big Hank, yes. Nice.
That's set in your neighborhood, Auntie Nudes.
Yes, it is. Sci-Fi, Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. Long Walk to Freedom. Very nice. Hmm. Hmm.
In case you don't have your chat open and you're so confused why we're not talking, you could click the speech bubble and you could engage. In the chat, people are going through the whole alphabet and saying different resources for each letter. So right now we're on P.
Super sour.
Shout out to Policing Black Lives. Excellent book.
Hmm. Wow, this list is flying. Very nice.
People have good ones.
Yeah. Yes, by Desmond Cole. Stamped. Things Fall Apart. Selma. Stonegate. Sister Act 2. Back in the Habit. Smile Orange. I don't know what that is. Reproduction. Ian Williams. Tina Turner. Double T. Yes. Any Known Blood. Trevor Noah. Born a Crime. The Vanishing Half, Britt Bennett, White Fragility, Voodoo, the documentary, The Book of Negroes. Very nice. Little Fires Everywhere. Oh yeah, that's a new TV show. Wangari Maathai. Yeah, great story about Wangari Maathai.
the wide wizard.
Next, okay. Such a Fun Age came out this year. Cool. Oh, Wrinkle in Time. Yeah, Black Lead. X, the movie. Americana. Oh yeah, the book. Who Killed Vincent Chin? The Youngest Marcher. Kids book. Nice. Zulu Nation. Very cool.
Okay, y'all. A to Z.
Great. You
Double
guys
love.
really And get your resources together. Look at this. There's a
Mhm.
whole list.
Okay, so should we explain before we go into those rooms, Nudes?
Yeah.
Is it past them?
Let's go to the next slide. So while we're in our breakout rooms, we're going to design a home-based learning lesson for your kids that's engaging, fun, accountable, and age appropriate. Okay, so group 1, we'll talk about Black excellence in Canada. Group 2, one sec, resistance to enslavement in Canada. Group 3, BLM movement in Toronto. Group 4, a cultural connection between Black and people of color. Group 5, intersectionality and resistance. Oh, good night, Sarah. It's my bedtime too. I've got coffee today.
And
All right, so,
oh, one more. There's a little bit more guidelines too.
oh yes, sorry. Elita, what is it, please?
So when you get into those groups and I think we're gonna try to give you the opportunity to choose your topic. So you can go into the group with the topic that you're interested in. But when you go into your group, there's some things that you could keep in mind in terms of developing an activity. There is, how would you incorporate art? You don't have to incorporate art, but it's a great way to make it engaging. What books would you use? What videos might you watch? What places you might like to visit in order to explore this topic with your kids? And then what allied actions would you follow up with? So whatever it is, like let's say you choose the group where you're developing an activity to talk to your kids about the BLM movement, then it's great to have an activity at the end where you can follow up with some kind of allied action, big or small. So we will go back to the selections, please. And then Ian, how do people click which one they would like to do?
Okay, hopefully people see choices. So you need to select the breakout room you'd like to go into, and then Leroy, you can put the facilitators. I think you should be able to assign people.
Okay, so should I assign? I'll try to assign.
Do people see breakout rooms? Nobody's choosing them.
Well, I see them.
Like you
No,
should.
I
No.
can't see it.
So if you go to more on your menu, you should see breakout rooms, and then you should be able to select. Some people are going.
I'm assigning the facilitators right now. That might be what you're seeing.
That is what I'm seeing. Yeah, Zoom can be a bit glitchy this way, where we don't get to.
If not, it'll be kind of sad, but we'll still get to do the activity, and we'll still, if people can't choose, we'll still come back and discuss what each group selected. So you'll still get to engage with all of them.
No.
No, hey, y'all don't see.
No. Okay, so I'm just gonna have to put people into rooms. Sorry.
Yeah. Could you put me in intersectionality? I put
Yeah.
okay, great. Invite it. Okay, okay, so looks like y'all, unfortunately, you're gonna get randomly assigned to one of these all excellent topics.
Yeah, we need a Zoom wall. I mean, one per room. It's not.
I'm gonna go join mine.
Okay.
I don't know where my room is. Oh, I just lost my. Hmm.
Hi, did you want to get into a breakout room?
I was in one and my Zoom keeps shutting down on me, so I got knocked out.
Oh, well, thanks for coming back. Which room were you in? Did you want to choose?
I was in
Resistance to enslavement?
the cultural connection between Black and people of color.
Okay. I'll send you
Okay.
back. Okay.
Thanks. Sorry.
That's okay. Allison, did you want to go?
Yes, sorry.
Not a problem. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
My
That's okay.
phone's terrible. I don't know. It's been doing this the last little while.
I'm impressed you keep coming back.
Thanks.
Yeah. Blah.
We're back.
Yeah, welcome back.
We're having a great conversation in our room.
You were? Okay, great.
Did you make any activities?
Oh, we talked a lot about what activities we could do and where we could find resources, but we didn't get to making.
Sick.
Did you?
Oh yeah, we made lots.
Wow. Oh, excuse me. Nice.
Um,
Everyone should be returning.
Just have to get this kid's night snack. I'll be right back. Or, well, I'm here.
In ours with a little. I was in the same one as continued sweet collages and a couple, but breaking down each of the questions took a long. We ended up discussing them, I think, for too long.
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Oh, that's right.
Um,
We came up with some great ideas based on the questions.
Okay, dope. So maybe each group could just get like 5 minutes to tell us some different ideas that they came up with. Hopefully we still have a spokesperson from each group or multiple spokespeople. So I know some people had to dip to put their kids to bed, which is understandable. But is there anybody here from Black Excellence in Canada?
Yes, that was our group.
Okay.
Um,
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the ideas you came up with to teach young people about Black excellence in Canada?
And stop sharing.
Would anybody from our group like to go? We talked about, so we went through the questions and we talked about like how we could incorporate art. And so what does that mean, right? What is art? Is it, it's paintings, it's body movement, it's sports, it's music, it's all these things. And then where we could find that stuff. Then what books we would use. We went through some of the books we're currently using, some ideas of what books we could use, videos that we could watch. And then we got to places we might visit. But yeah, like one of our participants was saying, we came up with things like collages, learning dance movements, right? We've all been missing those classes where the kids get to move their bodies, do high impact learning. We talked about how we incorporated freedom capoeira into Freedom School that teaches about martial art and Black resistance in Brazil during the times of enslavement. And the music, there's music with it, there's body movement. And so just looking through ideas that we either already know about or that we could look into further.
Can I just add something that
Yes, please.
I guess what I was sharing is trying to like leverage what is already of interest to your children, but then just exposing them to different stories than what they're used to. So when we were talking about books or even just different types of art form, I didn't share this example specifically, but my daughter is very much into dance, and one thing that we usually do every year is we'll go to the ballet, but this year obviously we couldn't do that. But then we also found this like hip hop production of the Nutcracker, which was really cool, and it was just a different way of telling that same story, but it was obviously present day and different dancers than she would have been used. Yes, exactly. And so it was just something like that, like taking something that she loves and finding the books that she loves, but making sure that there's different characters, like that the main character is Black as opposed to like your typical story of always having the lead character being someone who's white or that kind of thing. So that was one thing that we talked about a little bit. Just because it's hard to find the things that your kids like, and if you want to do something just a little bit different, just trying to leverage what's already part of their something that they're used to.
Great, that's awesome.
Talk through the different levels of what that actually means, right? From little babies and little kids up to, our preteens and teens.
Nice. Great. So how about anyone from group 2 resist? Debbie Allen is a Queen, for real. I actually watched that. Is it on Netflix? The Debbie Allen, yeah, it's on Netflix, you guys. So you can check out, Debbie Allen is this Black woman who has a dance studio in LA. And each year she does a huge production called Hot Chocolate Nutcracker. And it's incredible. It's really cool. So also found out Batwoman is coming out, work, as a TV series. Oh my gosh. And the lead is a Black woman. Okay, I'll be checking that out. Resistance to enslavement in Canada. Is anyone here from group 2 who made an activity about that?
I think Emmanuel's speaking, but he's on mute. Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Hi. I had an amazing group, so I don't want to be the only one talking. Please share your thoughts with me. So yes, unmute yourself. We had an amazing conversation. It went we talked about art. Somebody spoke about taking their kid to the graffiti wall in Toronto, and I did not know this, but he has Breonna Taylor there, and they were able to start a conversation through that, and that was really powerful for the parent. Graffiti wall, yes, in Toronto. We connected, like, obviously our topic is heavy and there's no way we can talk about it in 20 minutes. And so we went back, we talked about the school education, the school system, how it doesn't really teach a lot about slavery in Canada. And then we connected to the present things happening right now in the world, COVID and the riot that happened last night. But let me stop talking now. If anyone in my group, please, if you want to add on anything, because we had a really cool conversation actually. Like,
don't be shy, group 2.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'll just jump in. Just a couple of takeaways. I think there was a conversation around, because it's so heavy. There's, understanding the appropriateness of the age of the child and at what point and how to intersect, on that content would be something that we recommended being mindful of. But a few tangible ideas for those folks that are sort of like, how do you do that? A couple things we talked about. One was potentially at a younger age, but also at an older age, is to use art and the creation of art to talk about what does freedom look like for you. And so as a child, to sort of reverse the narrative, and as a child, like, draw a picture of what it looks like for you to be free, and then to use that as a kind of jump off point, as a conversation, to jump off into a conversation. We talked a little bit about, at an older age, as a kid, you may want to explore a little bit more the language, and I was sharing that I've got a book that speaks to sort of the idea of fugitives versus resistance versus enslavement versus slavery. And again, using even just yesterday's kind of events to have that conversation about language, riots and terrorists and protesters, and the difference between that language and what that language means. It could be again, another touch point for a conversation with kids. And then we talked a little bit about data in resistance and in using this particular COVID situation, instead of talking about the idea of trying to use lesson plans in classrooms that potentially are using COVID as well as a case to engage the children in a real life example of things that they're experiencing. And that didn't necessarily go to the point of maybe what I'm going to share now, but a little bit of the conversation around data was like, can we do mapping of where COVID cases are, what is the makeup of those neighborhoods, those kinds of things, but doing it in a way that is responsible around what kind of stereotypes are being reinforced in the classroom, if that is being used and is being done, but also could it be a method then to also talk about what does modern day slavery look like, because that data can surface into showing some disparities within communities and within particular professions and so forth, to kind of describe what that looks like, and then attaching a bit again, is Black Lives Matter, for example, as a form of resistance, is that a resistance to modern day slavery, and what does that look like in a conversation? So really a lot of conversation, and maybe not a very, tangible lesson plan, but a lot of that. I don't know if anyone else on the team, from the team, wants to say anything.
Okay, that's very cool. Okay, awesome. So how about anyone in group 3 who was talking about the BLM movement?
I can give a little recap for us, and anyone else jump in. I would say we aren't going to give you something tangible either. Our group started talking about what we know about Black Lives Matter Toronto and kind of the understanding and the history of that. And then the parents, all of us kind of sharing what we are or aren't doing now and the questions that came up. And it was really a conversation around age appropriate and temperament of children and how those conversations and what they like. And so directing the learning to, are they inspired by art? Do they gravitate towards that? Or are they more of an outdoors, let's go explore the neighborhood and see the Black Lives Matter signs and have discussions around that piece as well. And then another big piece, which I thought was really great, was that we might get it wrong, and we have the opportunity to unlearn and relearn and try again and have change that conversation and show the vulnerability with our kids as well through this process. And so different examples are some families engage in the protests and in the marches, and that's their way of being an ally. Others go for walks in the neighborhood, talk about the signs, or they hear in the news and the cultural pieces of different movies and art in that way as well. Anyone have anything they want to add to that?
Dope. So that's a really excellent point that you brought up, especially around getting it wrong and how we can model how that's just a teachable moment. And of course, everybody makes mistakes. If we say the wrong thing, then it's not the end of the world. That's the point, is to be learning about it and learn how to be a better ally. So how about group 4? Group 4 was talking about a cultural connection between Black and people of color.
Okay, so that was my group. Someone was talking about Trinidad. Did you want to elaborate and share that story? And then I will go into other themes that we spoke about.
Sure.
Okay.
I was just saying that I really liked Leroy's story and appreciated the, kind of how in Trinidad all these different cultures were brought together because of colonialism and slavery, and they were given this hierarchy of who is pitted against who, and ultimately they were able to eventually kind of amalgamate and grow together and create something really amazing and delicious, and things that we, it's a whole culture, really. Like the Caribbean culture was a culture that was created by everybody being thrown together, and that is in an ideal world something that Canada could grow towards, because we have so many different cultures, and we're not the melting pot of the United States. So it's not about melting, it's about merging, so that all of those cultures get to still exist. We all get to enjoy them as opposed to them disappearing.
Awesome. And a lot of the conversations that we had was about age appropriate conversations. So that was a majority of where it was and where it kind of stayed. But essentially, I was talking about how I used art, and that was like, I used text first as a way to start the conversations and then incorporate art, because that was like the hook and the way to engage students. We also spoke about different places that we would go. For example, when I was at the Freedom School, I told students about Afrofest, and I was so happy when I saw a student actually go with his family, as well as telling them about Caravana and like Grenada Day, Jamaica Day, Trinidad Day, and all of that type of stuff. That was very important. When we spoke about what books, I used a lot of Viola Desmond as a conversation starter about culture, resistance, and all of that stuff. So that was honestly a majority of the conversations that we had. And what I liked was that the group felt very comfortable and we started talking about personal experiences and honestly just thinking about how to support people when certain things come up. So yeah.
Awesome. I'm kind of freaked out by thinking of the idea of if Canada had like a meal like the roti that represented all the different cultures together, because I feel like it's so many and it would probably be gross. But that's an interesting thing to think about.
Poutine.
I know, right?
With a lot of ingredients. Okay, and how, oh yeah, so that was my group number 5. We had a volunteer to talk about our group's activities.
His name's Mark.
Yeah. Where are you, Mark?
I think it was more of a voluntold, to tell you the truth. You know, and I think I don't know if it would be a roti, but it might be a buffet table. Who knows? Both I enjoy. When we started, we were similar to group 3 in that we spent some time defining what intersectionality really means, and to make sure that we have a common understanding of that term. And we, at the same time, we decided that resistance, which is the other area, could be something that is done in a culminating activity where there's an action piece associated with understanding the concepts of intersectionality. So what we wanted to understand, I believe, around intersectionality is that it's important for our young children and ourselves to recognize and understand that there are many ways that we define ourselves, and that it's important for our students to see that students aren't defined solely by race, that there are other things that help determine who they are, such as religion, age for young kids determines who they are. If you're a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, not so much as when you get to be my age, I'm not really interested in defining myself by my age as much. Language, I'm thinking citizenship status, all of these things define who we are. And so it's important for our kids to first understand their own definitions, but then to sort of see what they look like compared to somebody else. And if we can find those commonalities, we can build on those things. And if we can see the differences, we can learn from one another and by learn from one another by learning about one another. So that's kind of the idea we were thinking. So we started thinking that maybe an art activity could be, to Simone, I think you were talking about the importance of pulling in some art into this activity. And we were thinking about potentially having kids identify something and mark it in some way. It could be on a chart, it could be marked with a design of some sort, or it could also represent like a constellation, and it could be something that student understands that defines them a little better by who they are. And then you have your own constellation, and you can talk about the different constellations and how we actually coexist on this universe with one another. And I think it's also important to acknowledge in doing this that each of those identities carry power, and there's privilege associated with them. And as our kids get older and they start to they start to understand this concept better, I think it's important for them to know that when they are in a place with the power of their identity, where there's others who might not identify in the same way, that it's important for us to understand that they're going to be experiencing things differently. And it's when we start to share those, understand those differences that others are experiencing when we are in a position of power and privilege, that we start to develop a better understanding. I don't know, I think I probably list a whole bunch of stuff. So please, anybody from my group, please jump in.
I'm not from your group, but can I just add something? It's important when we're talking about intersectionality to honor Kimberly Crenshaw, because she was the one that created the term intersectionality. And there's so many people that use that term, but they don't give her the credit for her word, because she's a Black woman. And we're all using these word or her word, and no one even knows that it came from a Black woman. So even when we're having these conversations, it's important to highlight who she is and say she came up with this word. And even like if it's in high school, just showing how many people are using this word, and the lack of referencing to that word is in all of these scholarly journals, articles, because it's just something that like pains me. Because I'm not gonna lie, like I never knew that she was the one that created this word. And it's important to honor her and see her perspective, because we're all using this word and we're taking from her and adding our own little spin or on like that word. So I think that when we're talking and engaging with the word intersectionality, to reference the person that created that term. I'm just putting that out.
And you would be you'd be happy, Simone, because we talked about her in our group too. And then also somebody in our group mentioned, like, had this idea that whenever you're like just watching a show with your kids or reading a book, you can talk about the identity markers of the characters. So like, what's the character's gender, their race, and can you know everything about their identity? Are there parts of identity that are invisible and some are visible? Are there times when we should hold back from making assumptions about people's identity? So we talked about that too, and that was dope. So some things in the chat. Someone has to leave. It's grounded in critical race theory, which is ultimately informed by Black feminist legal scholars. Yes. I'll be reading Crenshaw ASAP. Yes. Okay. So that's a great note to close out on. Thank you so much for joining us. It's just a reminder.